Sometimes the world shows its true face in the quietest moments. You're minding your business, trying to breathe through the day, and suddenly life reminds you that peace isn't guaranteed for everybody. Some folks get to move through the world without fear. They move with a shadow behind them, even when the sun is shining. My name is Simmons, and you're watching Chronicles of Black. If you're here for real stories, raw truth, and voices that never deserved to be silenced, hit that subscribe button. And if anything in this story hits your soul, leave a comment. I read every one of them, and your voice matters here. Marcus Hale never expected this day to turn into a storm. He stepped into that little diner on the corner of Willow Street like he had 1,000 times before. A quiet place. Old ceiling fans turning slow. The smell of frying onions drifting through the air. The kind of spot where folks sit alone with their thoughts, and no one bothers them. He sat down in a booth by the window, letting the late morning light fall across his face. Nothing about him drew attention. He didn't dress flashy. No suit, no badge showing. Just a man in a simple shirt, dark jeans, and tired eyes. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying the same weight day after day. He waited for his plate, tapping his finger lightly against the table, not nervous, just aware. Always aware. It was a habit he never shook. Even after all the training, all the years in federal service. People thought working for the FBI made him bulletproof. They didn't understand that before he was an agent, he was a black man. And out in the world, that identity always introduced itself first. He chose not to flash his badge unless he had to. He wanted to see how people treated him when they didn't know he had power, when they didn't know he had authority, when they only saw his skin before anything else. It was his way of staying grounded, his way of studying the world he lived in, and, in a strange way, his way of protecting himself. The waitress brought his food with a warm smile. He appreciated her softness, her easy tone. Those small things mattered more than people realized. They reminded him that not every room wanted to swallow him whole. He picked up his fork, ready to take that first bite, ready to just be a man eating lunch in a quiet diner. For a moment, it felt almost peaceful. Almost then he heard it. The low rumble of a car pulling up outside. A police cruiser. He didn't even have to look to know what it was. Years of experience sharpened his senses, but it was more than training. It was instinct. It was history whispering in his ear, telling him to brace himself. The door opened. Cold air slipped into the diner, even though it was warm outside. Marcus felt the shift before he saw the source. It was the same shift he'd felt since he was a kid whenever certain uniforms entered a room. Conversations ease into silence. Shoulders stiffen. People sit a little straighter. It happens so fast, most folks don't notice. Marcus noticed every single detail. He lifted his eyes just enough to see the reflection in the window. One officer tall, broad shoulders, heavy footsteps like he wanted the whole world to know he had power. Marcus didn't know his name yet, but something in the man's walk already set off an alarm inside his chest. The kind that told him this moment wasn't going to stay peaceful. Marcus took a slow breath, steadying himself. He didn't want trouble. He didn't fear trouble. But he understood exactly how quickly a situation could spiral when someone saw his body as a threat. Before they saw his humanity, the officer moved deeper into the diner, scanning the room like he was hunting something, or someone. His gaze slid past the elderly couple in the corner, past the line cook behind the counter, past the waitress holding a coffee pot mid-pour. Then the officer's eyes locked on Marcus. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't routine observation. That it was assumption. The kind Marcus knew too well. His jaw tightened just slightly. He didn't react, didn't shift in his seat, didn't give the man anything to misinterpret, but inside, he could feel the day tilting off its axis. The officer began walking toward him, boots hitting the floor in slow, heavy beats. Marcus placed his fork down, the metal tapping gently against the plate. His heartbeat never sped up, his breath stayed calm, but his mind sharpened. This wasn't fear, it was preparation, the same kind that kept black men alive in moments like this. The officer stopped at his table. The diner went quiet, and in that silence, Marcus could already feel the storm building. The officer didn't speak right away. He just stood there, towering over Marcus like he expected him to shrink. Marcus kept his eyes steady, not hostile, not submissive, just present. A man sitting in a booth trying to eat his lunch, that's all. But to Officer Bradley Carter, that wasn't all he saw. You, the officer said, pointing at Marcus as if he were calling out a problem he planned to fix. Stand up. Marcus felt the words hit him like a weight, not because he feared the man, but because he knew this script too well. The officer didn't introduce himself, didn't state a reason. Didn't even try to speak like a human being addressing another human being. He spoke like someone expecting obedience without question. Marcus kept his voice steady. "Can I ask what this is about?" That simple sentence made Carter's eyes narrow. The officer leaned closer, his hand resting near his holster as if the question itself posed danger. "Did I tell you to question me?" The diner grew colder. The waitress froze near the counter, gripping the coffee pot so tight her knuckles turned white. The elderly couple whispered to each other, eyes flicking between the officer and Marcus. No one stepped in. No one ever did. Marcus lifted his hands slowly, palms open, making sure every movement was visible. "I'm just eating, sir." Carter's lips curled into something between a smirk and a warning. "You match a description." Marcus almost laughed at the familiarity of those words, but there was no humor in him. "What description?" The officer didn't answer. He didn't need to. Marcus already knew. The description was him, his skin, his presence, his existence in a place someone didn't think he belonged. Marcus wanted to avoid trouble, but the officer wasn't here to prevent trouble. He was here to create it. "Stand up," Carter repeated, voice sharper now. Marcus slowly rose from his seat. He kept his hands visible, breathing steady, doing everything black parents teach their sons since they're old enough to understand danger. "Don't raise your voice. Don't make sudden movements. Don't try to explain too much. Don't give them anything they can twist." The room watched with held breath. "ID," Carter barked. Marcus nodded. "It's in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it now." "Move slow," the officer snapped, like he was handling a violent suspect. Not a man reaching for his wallet, Marcus moved exactly as he said he would, pulling his wallet out and holding it between two fingers. But Carter didn't wait. Before Marcus could even extend his hand fully, the officer grabbed his wrist, twisting it sharply. A spike of pain shot up Marcus's arm, but he clenched his jaw and kept calm. "Why are you resisting?" Carter barked, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Marcus felt a wave of heat rise in his chest. "I'm not resisting." "That's enough out of you," the officer said. Marcus didn't flinch when the officer shoved him back against the booth. But the room felt tighter, the air heavier. The situation was spiraling, not by accident, but by the officer's intention. Marcus could see if the man wanted control, wanted a scene, wanted a moment where he could say he handled someone he already decided was a threat. Marcus began, trying to keep his voice low, calm, steady. He didn't get to finish the sentence. Carter's fist came out of nowhere. It connected with Marcus's cheek so hard the sound cracked through the diner like a gunshot. Marcus's head snapped to the side. His plate flipped, food splattering across the floor. A woman gasped. The elderly couple flinched. Even the cook leaned forward in shock. Marcus tasted blood, warm, metallic, familiar. He didn't fall. Not yet. But Carter shoved him again, harder, and Marcus stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the booth. "Get on the ground," the officer shouted. Marcus didn't move fast enough for Carter's liking. Or maybe he moved too fast. Either way, it didn't matter. The officer slammed him to the floor, pushing his knee into Marcus's back so hard he felt the breath rush out of him. Hands grabbed his wrists. Metal cuffs snapped around them. The cold steel pressed into his skin. The diners stayed silent. Some stared. Some looked away. Some pulled out their phones and hesitated, unsure if recording would make things better or worse. Marcus kept his face turned to the side, cheek pressed against the cold floor, breath shallow. Not because he was scared, but because he was holding something inside. A feeling he knew well. A feeling he buried often. The kind of humiliation that carved itself into you. He swallowed hard and kept his voice low. "Officer, this isn't necessary." Carter leaned closer, his voice dripping with arrogance. "I decide what's necessary." Marcus closed his eyes, not in surrender, but in control. He could already feel the shift inside him. A deeper calm, a deeper understanding. The officer had no idea who he just put his hands on, but he was about to find out. Marcus stayed still on that diner floor, cheek against the cold tile, cuffs biting into his wrists. The officer's weight pressed down on him like he was trying to disappear him into the ground. But Marcus had learned long ago that the body reacts one way, and the soul reacts another. His body stayed calm. His soul, stirred. The room around him faded for a moment, and all he could hear was his own breathing. Slow, controlled, measured. But underneath that calm breath lived something older than him, something he carried from men he never met, from stories he grew up hearing whether he asked for them or not. In that moment, he wasn't just Marcus Hale, a man pinned on the floor for daring to eat in peace. He was every black man who ever swallowed his anger to stay alive. Every boy taught to lower his voice so the world wouldn't twist it. Every father who prayed he'd make it home to tuck his kids in. Officer Carter didn't know that when he slammed Marcus down, he slammed him onto a timeline that stretched back generations. Marcus remembered being 9 years old, playing in the front yard while his grandfather sat in his old wooden chair on the porch. His grandfather always stared off at some horizon only he could see. When Marcus asked why he sat like that, the old man just said, "I'm watching memories." Marcus didn't understand then. He understood now. His grandfather had been shoved off sidewalks just so others could pass, had been told to step back, look down, make space, had been treated like his breath borrowed air that wasn't meant for him. He survived a world built to break him, and still found enough gentleness to teach Marcus how to tie his shoes. Marcus's mother came next in his mind, her hands shaking the day she got a call from his school. He was 8. A teacher had labeled him aggressive because he defended himself from a kid who shoved him. She cried in the car outside the school because she knew what that word could follow him like a curse. "They don't give you room for mistakes," she told him. "You have to stay calm even when it's unfair. Promise me," he promised, even though he didn't fully grasp the weight of that promise. Decades later, that promise was the only thing keeping him from reacting as the officer's knee dug deeper into his back. He swallowed another breath. Carter shouted something, but the words blurred. Marcus knew that tone. He had heard it in police training briefings. He'd heard it in interrogation rooms. He'd heard it in the voices of men who hid fear behind authority. But beneath the shouting, something else rose in Marcus's mind. A memory of why he'd joined the FBI. It wasn't power he wanted. It wasn't prestige. It was change. He thought if he worked inside the system, he could help fix the cracks from within. Maybe he could be the kind of man he wished had shown up for his friends, for his cousins, for the neighbors who never got justice. But here he was, on the floor of a diner, treated like nothing he'd ever accomplished mattered. As Carter tightened the cuffs unnecessarily, Marcus felt a different kind of ache. Not the physical kind. The kind that sits in your chest when you realize how quickly the world strips you back down to what it assumes you are. A threat. A problem. A body to control. He felt the humiliation burn under his skin, crawling up his neck. Not because he was powerless. Not because he feared this man. But because he had spent his whole life walking that thin line between calm and explosion. He had spent years swallowing rage, fear, and frustration, stacking them deep inside himself like stones. This moment pushed at that pile. Hard. Carter lifted him roughly, dragging him to his feet like he was something heavy and unwanted. Marcus felt pain shoot down his shoulder, but he didn't let it show. The diner watched as he was escorted out, head held level, jaw clenched. Not broken, just pushed past his breaking point. In the back of the cruiser, the door slammed shut beside him. The small space closed around him like a box built for shame. He stared at his reflection, faintly visible in the glass. Blood at the corner of his lip, hair slightly out of place, eyes steady, eyes carrying fire. He wasn't angry because he'd been hit. He'd been hit before. Life had hit him harder than any officer ever could. He was angry because of what that punch represented. The centuries behind it. The expectations baked into it. The ease with which it was delivered. Carter walked around to the driver's seat. Marcus watched him through the cage. The man still full of pride. Still convinced he'd done the right thing. Still convinced he held all the power in this story. But underneath Marcus's calm silence, something shifted. Something solid. Something final. He wasn't letting this moment get buried under excuses, lies, or paperwork. Not this time. Not from this man. Not from anyone. Marcus lifted his head slightly, the smallest movement, but enough to feel like reclaiming something. His breathing deepened. His mind sharpened. The officer thought the story ended here. He had no idea the story had just started. The ride to the station felt longer than it should have, not because of the distance, but because of the silence sitting between the two men. Officer Carter kept glancing at Marcus in the rearview mirror, waiting for fear, anger, or desperation to show in his face. But all he saw was calm. A calm so steady it unsettled him. To Marcus, the silence wasn't empty. It was focused, controlled. He wasn't thinking about revenge. He wasn't thinking about ego. He was thinking about the truth and how quickly truth exposes people who think they can hide behind authority. The cruiser finally pulled into the station lot. Carter stepped out, slamming the door with a force that said he wanted the world to know he was in control. He yanked the back door open, grabbed Marcus by the arm, and led him inside without a word. The officers at the front desk looked up, surprised by the sight of a man in cuffs with blood on his lip but no anger in his eyes. Carter marched him down the hallway with smug energy, like he was delivering a trophy. He pushed Marcus into a small processing room and started talking to another officer, loud on purpose. as if trying to paint a picture before the truth had a chance to breathe. Picked him up after he got aggressive in a diner, Carter said, removing the cuffs but keeping his hand ready, just in case Marcus dared to stand like a human being. Matched a description. Refused commands. Got physical. Marcus didn't respond. He simply sat in the metal chair provided, hands resting gently on his knees, eyes steady. He watched the other officer take in the scene. Marcus calm and composed, Carter sweating slightly from adrenaline. The shift began right then, subtle but real. Phone call, Marcus said quietly. Carter scoffed. You'll get it when I say you get it. The officer behind the desk frowned at that, a flicker of discomfort passing over his face. Something wasn't adding up. Marcus turned his head toward Carter, not with hostility, not with challenge, but with a stillness that felt heavier than anger. I would like my call. The processing officer hesitated, then handed him the phone. Carter's jaw tightened. Marcus dialed a number from memory. No pause, no hesitation. The call connected almost instantly. This is Agent Marcus Hale, he said calmly, wiping a spot of dried blood from the corner of his mouth. Badge number 14,731. I need immediate assistance at the Westfield police station. The room froze. Carter blinked. Confusion flickered across his face, then annoyance, then something colder, fear he tried to swallow. Marcus continued speaking, voice even, professional, unmistakably authoritative. I've been detained and assaulted without cause. I need a supervisor from the field office sent down. I will require bodycam access and a retrieval of footage from a diner on Willow Street. He ended the call gently, setting the phone down as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The processing officer stared. Your FBI? Marcus met his eyes with the same calm he'd had since the diner floor. Yes. Carter let out a sharp breath, shaking his head like he didn't believe it. No way. You're lying. But he didn't say it with confidence. He said it like a man trying to keep the world he built around himself from collapsing. Run his name. The processing officer said quickly. Carter moved toward his computer, hands suddenly clumsy on the keyboard. As the system pulled up Marcus's file, color drained from his face. Special Agent Marcus Hale, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Criminal Investigations Division, active good standing. The air in the room shifted instantly. Not subtly, completely. Carter stepped back, palms sweating. His voice cracked slightly. Why didn't you tell me who you were? Marcus looked up at him with a calm that cut deeper than anger ever could. I didn't need to. That sentence hit Carter harder than any punch could have. Moments later, the station erupted with footsteps. Supervisors entered. 2 men in suits followed, flashing badges quickly before approaching Marcus with urgency. Agent Hale, are you all right? One asked. Marcus nodded. I'm fine. I need the footage secured. I want statements taken from every civilian present. I want identification on every officer involved from the moment of entry to transport. Carter took a step forward, panic rising in his voice. Hold on, this is a misunderstanding. Marcus turned to him slowly. You hit a man eating lunch, Marcus said. You escalated when there was nothing to escalate. You lied before you even reached the station, and you treated me exactly how you treat people who can't defend themselves. The only misunderstanding here is your belief that your badge protects you from consequences. The room stayed silent. Supervisors moved Carter aside. The other officers kept their eyes down, unsure of what to say, unsure of where to stand. Marcus continued speaking, not with joy, not with gloating, but with a steady truth. This isn't about my title. This is about what you saw when you looked at me. You saw a threat. You saw a stereotype. You saw something you wanted to control. But you never saw a man. Carter opened his mouth, but no words came out. Marcus straightened his shoulders. Now, you will answer for that. And just like that, the entire balance of power flipped. No yelling, no violence. Truth alone shifted the ground beneath every person in that room. Everything moved faster than Marcus expected. Internal Affairs didn't waste a single hour once the footage reached their desks. The moment the report landed, the course started, the meetings began, and the officer who had thrown the punch found himself standing in a cold room with 2 investigators staring at him like they could see straight through every excuse he was preparing to give. While the investigation unfolded, Marcus didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He didn't feel victorious. What he felt was heavier, like a weight pressing on him from the inside. The officer was suspended first, then removed from patrol, then placed under official review, and the whispers that spread through the department were loud enough for Marcus to hear even across the city. The man who thought he could treat a black stranger like he wasn't human was now facing charges. a media firestorm, and a long list of consequences he never saw coming. People kept asking Marcus if he felt satisfied, if he felt vengeance, if he felt like he had won something. He kept answering the same way. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for accountability. The department eventually reached out and asked Marcus to speak to a group of trainees and a few shaken officers who needed to hear the truth from someone who lived it, not from some textbook that pretended bias was theoretical. Marcus agreed, not because he wanted a spotlight, but because he knew real change starts in small rooms where honesty has a chance to breathe. When he walked into the training hall, the room went quiet, not out of fear, but out of respect. He stood there, hands in his pockets, speaking the way a man does when he's not performing, just telling the truth with no sugar, no theatrics, no bitterness. He looked at them and asked the exact question they didn't expect. How many of you understand what authority really is? No one answered. He continued. Authority isn't your weapon. It's not your badge. It's not how loud you can yell at someone. Authority is the responsibility to treat people like their lives matter just as much as yours. And if you can't do that, you don't belong out there. A few officers lowered their heads. Some shifted in their seats. A young trainee in the front row stared at Marcus like she was hearing a new language. Marcus spoke directly to her without even knowing her name. When you put on that uniform, you can save a life, or you can ruin one. You get to choose which kind of person you'll be every single day. He paused, letting the silence settle. What happened to me wasn't about one moment. It was about everything that came before it. Every black man who ever had to lower his voice to survive. Every father who prayed his son would make it home after a traffic stop. Every woman who had to teach her children how to stay alive around people who were supposed to protect them. None of them looked away. Some had tears in their eyes. It was the first time many had been forced to see beyond themselves. Later that week, Marcus walked back into the same diner where the whole nightmare started. The air felt different this time. The staff stood up when he walked in, like the room itself was apologizing. The cook wiped his hands on his apron and approached him carefully. We're sorry, truly. We didn't speak up fast enough. Thank you for not letting this get buried. Marcus nodded. He didn't need them to kneel. He didn't need them to overcompensate. He just needed honesty. And he finally got it. He sat at the same booth, the one near the window, the one that held a bruise on his memory. But it felt lighter now, like the room had learned something to when he finished eating. He stepped outside and found himself facing a soft sunset stretching across the sky. The colors were warm, gentle, steady. The exact opposite of the morning that had changed everything. He stood there, hands resting on the railing, and whispered to himself, the world won't change overnight, but a moment like this pushes it forward, even if it's just an inch. He didn't say it for the city. He didn't say it for the department. He said it for anyone who felt invisible, anyone who felt unheard. Then he turned toward the camera, toward every person listening, every viewer who found themselves holding their breath without realizing it. And he spoke like he was sitting across from them, not performing for them. If you hear my voice right now, I need you to understand something. Dignity is not a gift someone hands you. It's your birthright. Justice is not a favor. It's a promise. And silence. Silence is the most expensive thing you can ever choose. Because when you stay quiet, someone else pays the price. He took one breath, a slow one, a final one. So speak up, stand up, push the world forward, even if it's just an inch. The screen would fade there, not because the story is over, but because the conversation has only just begun.